You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There is a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of February 9th, 2024. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where we're currently hearing oral arguments over the issue of whether or not the cats are getting enough treats. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal.
Yeah, and friend of the court over here did not get a hearing.
No.
It's a panel of 3 judges. They're all felines, and they've all decided it's definitely not getting enough
sham.
treats.
It's a sham hearing. I mean, we know what's going to happen. It doesn't matter what we say.
The results are in way ahead of time, regardless of any testimony from either of us.
Mm-hmm.
But this week, it is all lawyers all the time on cable news, just like it was last week and the week before and the week before that. And, you know, I've never been involved in a deep lawsuit situation, but I understand that they almost never come to a sharp point. And I mean, it's great that E. Jean Carroll won both her lawsuits. I am 100% team E. Jean Carroll. But they're going to be appealed and appealed again. And the fact that, you know, what I called I called him very bad names today on Twitter, but the fact that Donald Trump is now a convicted rapist will not change one mind on the right.
Yep.
And we have to understand that. And you were saying something in a previous edition of this podcast that we've been trying to record all afternoon.
Before our previous recording system failed.
About you were talking about how we have succeeded at Both Sides Don't, right? And we have succeeded at No Fair Remembering stuff. But,
absolutely.
But what?
But we haven't yet penetrated the zeitgeist that there is no one on the other side left to talk to.
To convince,
There just isn't. And it's this continual sense of shock that I can't believe they did this or that or the other thing, or can't believe that Clarence Thomas or whatever. It's, come on, man. You know, we're past that. We're not in the era of persuasion anymore. There's nobody left to persuade except for the people.
Debate.
Yeah, there's no one left to debate. There's nobody left to talk to. There's nobody left to compromise with. There's nobody left to cut a deal with. They're all bad all the time, and they're always going to be for the rest of our lives.
That's very sad. That is incredibly very sad.
Yeah, it's unhealthy. It's incredibly unhealthy.
Yeah.
But they have found their magic formula, which is we have a base who will believe anything we tell them, and when we change our mind an hour later, they'll believe that too. They don't give a shit about democracy. All the things that all your favorite Never Trumpers swear that they used to believe in, the base never believed in that shit.
Yeah.
And we're probably the worst people to be conveying this message because we've been conveying this message for 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting to tell people, why are you still fucking surprised when Republicans turn out to be Republicans? They're just awful. And
let me ask you a question about that, though, Driftglass. Sure. The Senate has passed some bills, some bipartisan bills.
Right.
In this year, they've done it. And today, I just read before we recorded, they have passed aid for Israel and Ukraine without any border stuff in it. With 67 votes voting yes. 67. That's enough, you know, to break the filibuster. It never happens that you get 67 votes for anything. But 67 people voted in the Senate for aid for Ukraine and Israel. Now
what happens?
Now
what happens?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, exactly. Now what happens?
Yeah.
All right.
No.
The House is not going to pass that without lots of Democratic vote. Now, maybe they will. Maybe they will pass that package with 4 Republicans voting with all of the Democrats. They might.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I still don't. I'm not going to back off from my initial premise, which is, you know, there are times when the external pressure to do something from donors, like on Israel, becomes so overwhelming.
Or the Wall Street Journal editorial board, right?
Yeah. And, you know,
I can't go drink with my friends in Georgetown if we don't provide aid to Israel soon, right? I mean, that happens.
And there are
social pressure.
A vestigial number of old line, hawkish foreign policy Republicans still,
Joe Lieberman's, right?
Kicking around in the Senate somewhere.
Exactly.
Not Joe Lieberman.
I mean, he's not in the Senate, but that type. Yeah.
And you can scrape them together. But the idea that the Republican Party as a party can be trusted to negotiate in good faith, can be asked to compromise, can be asked to do anything other than what Donald Trump tells them to do.
Really?
Is ridiculous. Yeah. And they have been headed down this road for a very, very, very long time. Now, because it's been all lawyers all the time, I mentioned this before in our podcast. You and I do a little thing that I'm stealing the term from a writing course I used to take and used to facilitate called the steeplechase. And during the steeplechase in writing, you're writing something and whoever's facilitating the class goes like change tense, change perspective, change the point of view. And you have to shift, and you have to shift immediately in the middle of the story to the second thing. So you and I do a little steeplechase through the channels. Yeah. We go through the Newsmax and Fox and MSNBC and so forth. Especially during breaking news, to see what's happening simultaneously across the spectrum.
And often it's very entertaining to find out.
It's entertaining and depressing and sickening and entertaining. Yeah. And we did that last night. We go to see who's covering what and how. And the only surprise, honestly, like on Newsmax, is how high the skirts will be hiked up, how leering and creepy the dirty old men who are on the panel leering at the women will be, and what insane mishmash of blather will be coming out of their face holes. And while doing that last night, I happened across a program called Judge Steve Harvey. I should be specific. Reruns of Judge Steve, reruns of old-fashioned network garbage television. This is just reality TV schlock. This particular case was about two guys who'd each bet each other that they could do something athletic, I'm not sure what, and each had succeeded at whatever they were going to do, but each had made the agreement with loopholes that had now kicked in both cases. It was like $50 on one side, $500 on the other. It was silly. So Steve Harvey, Judge Steve Harvey, set them up with identical arcade basketball shooting games. I'm sure you've seen these at Chuck E. Cheese or other arcades, and had them shoot it out. We're going to, for 2 minutes or whatever it is, basketball firing contest. I was going to stay there. Honestly, I wanted to stay because watching that dumb reality TV courtroom rerun schlock felt like a spa retreat compared to the wall-to-wall lawyering on cable TV.
This is why we watch Caddyshack on election night.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. And I'm convinced this is why. I mean, there's a number of reasons why you and I like hard-boiled noir detective stories. Usually because they go somewhere.
Yes, there's some justice.
They start with a crime and you end up with justice. You start with a crime or a solution. Even if the bad guy gets away, you figure out how it's done and then you're done and you move on. And it's very attractive. But yeah, I'll watch Gunsmoke. But as you pointed out earlier, only the black and white ones.
Only the black and white Gunsmoke, right.
The colored ones are crap. Or I'll watch car shows. Or you and I will watch the Red Letter Media guys, kick the crap out of a movie.
They're very funny.
But there's a certain amount of I've got to make my brain go someplace else. And so for 3 minutes, I watched Judge Steve Harvey, and it was like, oh, this is the 90s. I remember the 90s. The 90s were wonderful. But then we had to get back to find out if the court were granting cert or if the court withheld cert, or will the court find some middle ground on cert? And does cert really contain Retsin? And what is Retsin anyway? And about that time, I realized I'd fallen asleep, and I was dreaming about certs. The breath mint that was actually two mints in one.
Certs captures all the fresh, clean flavor of a mountain stream, all the frosty coolness of falling snow. What's more, Certs contains a golden drop of Retsin, the miracle breath purifier that makes your breath clean and fresh. So get new Certs. Remember, only smoother, tastier Certs gives you two mints in one.
And then I did the only thing I could think to do, which was I ran to the internets to research certs. And here's what I learned. Certs were classified as mints, but they actually contain no oils of any mint plant at all. Instead, as has long been advertised, the mint contains Retsin, a trademark name for a mixture of copper gluconate, partially hydrogenated cottonseed oil, and flavoring. And, I don't know if you do this, Blue Gal. It's kind of an inside secret. It's the copper glutamate in Retsin, which gives certs its signature green flecks. So, very exciting. I know. Well, now I know. Now I'm full of information. Then, after what felt like 1,000 days, I got back on television where there were 12 lawyers still asking to cert or not to cert. That is the question. And we're back. Now, finally, fun fact, since I was on the internet anyway, I thought I'd look something else up. During the year 2023, the year just passed, MSNBC, who are not our friends, by the way, MSNBC averaged 1.14 million total viewers in primetime. Okay? That's down.
You mean in a country of 300 million people?
Yes.
Plus?
1.14 million total viewers in primetime. And that's down 14% from the network's October average. And it's number 4 overall behind ESPN, Fox News, and Hallmark Channel, which is now just cranking out holiday movies. So, on the other hand, Judge Steve Harvey held a pretty steady week-to-week total of 3.2 million viewers per week, which then dipped as the season ended to a low of 2.6 million viewers towards the end of the run.
So that's twice what MSNBC averages.
Twice to 3 times what MSNBC averages. So just in case you were ever wondering why almost no one knows what the hell is going on with Donald Trump and the GOP and the justice system and why they should vote for this or that or who's running for anything, that's why. That's exactly why. So...
Well, and Rachel Bitecofer's book came out this week, and it's a bestseller, which, by bestsellers on Amazon, that probably means 100,000 copies.
Bless her heart. Yep.
I started to read it, and the first chapter is really harsh and blunt about the American public. The American public does not give a shit about what's happening in our government.
Nope. At all.
And she's very blunt about the majority of people in this country are non-voters. We have to snap ourselves out of our cocoon where everyone knows who Andrew Weissman is. Yeah. It's just not. Well, what's really funny is Rachel Bitecofer told the story on Twitter of bumping into Andrew Weissman in the green room, and he didn't know who she was. So talk about being in a cocoon.
Micro celebrities. Yeah.
Yes. So, but seriously, that there is no interest in the general public in figuring out the future of democracy.
At all.
And on one hand, as a historian, I recognize that as Americans are fat and happy. And as long as things are rolling along and they get to go to McDonald's and they get to go to Starbucks and Target, then things are going along. Right. Now, I personally think, and I think this is borne fruit, taking away abortion rights snapped a lot of people out of that.
When did that happen? What happened?
Why did that happen? Well, it was a 40-year project.
Yeah.
And so there is an awakening going on, and it's certainly going on with people of middle child and youngest child generation.
Yeah.
Who remember Republicans making their mom cry over healthcare. Exactly. So this is not something new for them. But getting back to this ubiquitous cable news lawyer fest, you and I, Driftglass, in our previous marriages, were married to lawyers.
We were.
And so a lot of the legal jargon, we know from the dinner table of our previous, I will just kindly say less happy marriage than the current one.
Yes.
Is that all right?
Although I did come away with an understanding of the exceptions to the hearsay rules.
That's right.
I did not have before I was married. So,
my ex wrote the book on the Mann Act, which I've mentioned that before. So, so we know that cert in this context is not a breath mint.
No.
It is an abbreviation of certiorari. And in the Supreme Court, if 4 justices agree to review the case, then the court will hear the case. This is referred to as granting cert. And if 4 justices do not agree to review the case, then the court will not hear the case. And this is denying cert. All right. So we got that. Now, for the rest of those terms, you need to go to prosecuting Donald Trump with my TV lawyer, Andrew Weissman.
There are plenty of law podcasts, law casts.
And I'm listening because, as I say, Andrew Weissman is my TV lawyer.
Yeah.
So I more often than not listen to that. And I found it hilarious today or yesterday, their episode, talking about the 3-judge panel deciding that Trump indeed does not have presidential immunity.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because Driftglass and I were really looking forward to the State of the Union.
Oh, yeah.
With Biden and his presidential immunity. But I listened to
people
it.
Why? I mean, having armed guards come in and tote all the Republicans off to Gitmo. What are you going to do? What? No, you don't have any immunity. No. I have the immunity.
I have immunity. You're under arrest.
We'll bring in the guillotine. Apparently I can shoot someone right here on the floor of Congress.
The floor of the House. And by the way, 5 of you Supreme Court justices are also going.
These are part of my duties as president. So
arrest
I have total immunity from everything.
Anyway, there was something that Mary McCord said, the podcast partner said, where Andrew Weissman said, wait a minute, no, this is prosecuting Trump 2.0. Our audience already knows all that jargon. You don't need to explain it. And I was like, no, please keep explaining it because I do not get all of this. But again, you don't need to listen to this podcast to get all that. Don't come to us for that. Says, NBC produces about 17 podcasts from the lawyers about this legal stuff. And they're good. I'm not saying they're bad podcasts. They're very informative. But it is a little bit we are being overdosed at this point. Those of us who are glued to what's happening.
Everything that should be resolved in some other way by the voters, by justice, by shame, by the Republican Party behaving like human beings instead of like animals, has all gotten dumped into the courts. So everything's getting resolved in a court at the same time.
Following the excruciatingly slow winding path that the law follows, even while the Republican Party is getting worse by the speed of light. It feels nuts to be riding a tortoise out of a fire. And it is exhausting. You and I just talk about how tired we are of this.
Yeah.
And you use the analogy, being told by the fire department that, sure, at some point we'll get around to putting out the fire that's burning down the town. But right now, the best we can do is a 27-part lecture on water rates. And pipe-to-home water loss ratios are also very important.
So buckle up. It's going to be a long lecture. And and then now the town's in ashes. Like, well, that really wasn't our job to save the town. Our job was to inform you of how the process works and work it through in a slow and meticulous procedure.
And did you know, Driftglass, that one of the firefighters, his wife actually set part of the fire?
Well,
She's a firebug.
Maybe he shouldn't have, but you have to rely on the fire department to police themselves.
Exactly. And so he will come around after the pipe-to-home water loss ratio lecture to deciding whether or not she should be punished for setting the fire.
No. He's out there sitting next to the fire with weenies and marshmallows, making s'mores going, ha-ha!
Yeah.
Burn it down, fuckers!
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
We would like to thank the opinionated ogre on Twitter, a person on Twitter, for pointing out these comments that made our heart grow 3 sizes that day. There was a piece on CNN, and it was pretty good. It broke down how Donald Trump and Republicans and conservative media created hysteria over the southern border and made funding pretty much everything else conditional on enacting some pretty drastic immigration policies. And then when a bipartisan group of the Senate put together exactly the bill they had asked for, it took less than a week for Donald Trump and the Republicans and conservative media to kill it because it might help Joe Biden. And the reason we know this is so is because Republicans said it out loud. They bragged about the fact, we don't want to give Joe Biden a win. Are you kidding me? That's crazy. Now, so that's the piece. It broke it all down about how this is what's happening and why it's happening. That's fine. However, the chyron that ran under the piece, that's that little letterbox thing that lets casual viewers know what's being talked about. Is this something I should see? That said something very different. It reads, or read, quote, the definitive autopsy of D.C.'s stunning failure to govern, unquote. D.C.
Just put a gun to my head. I swear to God. It's Washington's fault.
It's Washington.
That's so very Chuck Todd of you, CNN.
Is that his job now, writing chyrons
Writing
for
CNN chyrons, yes. But what gladdened our hearts, I have to say, it really did make us feel much better, is the immediate reaction from dozens of people. Not us.
No.
And as you said, the person that brought it to our attention was the opinionated ogre said, this is going to do your heart good to see how many people are shooting this down. And it did.
It did.
With all due respect, this is an example. With all due respect, it is not Washington or D.C.'s failure to govern. It's Republican failure to govern. Saying otherwise provides cover for the people who are failing us. It's like the message is getting out there, Driftglass.
And this is, we can't adequately vocally demonstrate the amount of capital letters and exclamation points. But I'll give you a few more examples. This is another one, except it's not Washington, it's the Republicans catering to Trump.
It fails by being described as a problem of Washington in the tweet rather than Republicans.
Abby Phillips insinuated the Democrats are in denial that the border needs fixing. That is not true. The media is not our friends. Hello, Steve. I live in Texas and have watched the media and the GOP play games on the border and blame Democrats for close to 30 years. I'm sick of it.
I'll bet in Texas you're really sick of it. Yep. Let me interrupt this for a moment and talk about Democrats and how they are approaching the border and how it kind of woke me up this week. It became clear to me listening to Hillary Clinton and Chris Murphy and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that 2024's border situation is not 1995's border situation.
Right.
And we probably do need to do something to somehow manage better the flow of undocumented people through the border.
Yep.
Also, that means coming up with a system,
right,
to manage the flow of migrants, which apparently is part of what this bill did. Although it's not, it gave Republicans a lot more of what they want than we want. But it doesn't mean shutting down the border and being racist shitbirds about it, right?
No. Well, when you share a 2,000-mile border with another country, and one country is very poor, and the countries south of them are very poor, or problematic,
and are having crises with drugs and gangs, and
we are very rich, very, very rich. It's Anna.
Okay, we better pick it up.
Hello. She is. We're recording right now. Shall I bring the phone to her, or? Yeah, that's okay. Okay, I'll let her know. Love. Bye. She's on the way home.
Okay. But it means coming up with a system to manage the flow of migrants, not shutting down the border and being racist shitheads about it. And it also is very timely that the CBO came out with a report this week, the Congressional Budget Office, noting that as it ever was, immigration helps the U.S. economy, and particularly the GDP, to thrive in the trillions. And we, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez pointed out on the Chris Hayes show, we need immigration for elder care.
Yes, we do.
We really do. And I pointed this out on this podcast.
Many
that
times.
Is not unskilled work. That is skilled work.
It is.
And we need laborers in that field. Hal Sparks has mentioned how absolutely screwed China is on this.
Yes.
Because they don't allow immigration.
Right.
And, it's keep China pure is sort of the thing. And they don't have anyone to take care of their elderly because they had the one-child program and they had, limited births. And now they have, as we do, a population that has a ballooning elderly population with no one to care for them. And if we're not careful and we don't take advantage of people want to live here and want to work here and are willing to work in jobs where a lot of white Americans, frankly, are not willing to work. This is the same as it ever was. This is the way it was in the 1890s.
Yep.
And we just aren't. If we're using racism, it's only going to bite the people that are bitching about it.
Yeah, but after they're dead, honey.
Yeah, I know.
That's the point.
I know.
We do have a bit of a gerontocracy going on.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
And that's unfortunate, and I wish it were otherwise, and it's not. And complaining that Joe Biden is old is not going to change a goddamn thing.
Right. And Joe Biden knows he's the last one.
Yeah.
From after Joe Biden, a whole lot of boomers are going to have to get used to the fact that the president is younger than they are. And that's what they hated about Obama in addition to race.
Yeah.
Was it makes them old if the president is younger than you.
Yeah. And that's eventually we all cycle out of this life and new people come along. Yeah. And so the question is, what do you leave behind? And will you leave behind economic catastrophe, ecological disaster? We had always hoped to leave behind the ideals of the United States. Fairness and equity and liberty and justice for all and every person is equal and opportunity for everyone and clean air and clean water. That's achievable. But it's not achievable as long as the Republican Party is standing on the neck of the United States. And one of the dumbest things in the world is the fantasy that you have a 2,000-mile border with another country who are poor and who have a lot of people south of them in other countries who are very poor or distressed or under threat.
Right.
And you have a very, very wealthy country up north, and that you can put up a giant wall, can shut it out.
Right. And razor wire and hurt
can't do
people.
It will never work. The oceans didn't work. They got here anyway. My people got here anyway. Didn't matter. There's a huge ocean. Yeah, we figured out a way. People will always figure out a way to find their way to a place where their family is safe and they can raise their children.
Right.
And the fact that my sister, Arizona resident, used to drive to Mexico and come back every day.
Americans go to Mexico every day to get prescription drugs. What are you talking about?
It used to not be this completely nuts.
Yeah.
Now, there are broken laws and broken policies that are clearly screwed up and clearly need to be fixed. That's fine.
And they've aged out of being realistic.
Yeah. But that's not the problem. The problem is one political party has this fantasy that the brown people are coming for your jobs and your women, and they're going to be here mooching off. Yeah. Yes. And they're mooching off of us. It's the same goddamn welfare argument that Ronald Reagan was using.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that they're here for your stuff. No, they're here to wipe your ass when you're too old to do it yourself. Yeah. Yep. And that's not their purpose. That God did not put them on the earth to do that. Nope. I'm saying that they're here to work and to raise their family
and to start businesses.
To start businesses.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we could just wrap our fucking heads around the fact that the idea of the United States should transcend whoever is implementing that idea. So if the next generation of Americans are all brown and speak 2 different languages or 3, that's awesome.
That's still America.
I'm an old white guy. That's fine with me. Yeah. And you know what? You'd be horrified by my existence. Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm some dirty Irishman. I came over to his country.
Lock the door and keep him out.
Yeah. So it's always been this way. And we
did a whole show on it. We did a whole show on Maria Bartiromo's immigration policies. Yes.
And if we could just learn that this is always the grievance of the people sort of in the middle or lower middle class who think that they're going to be dragged down and outcompeted by the new guys. Look, let me tell you something. You're always going to be outcompeted by demographics and by the actuarial table. But the ideal of the country is the important thing. And the only people who are sticking up for the ideals of this country are the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So, and as imperfect as it is an imperfect vessel, but when has it not been?
And there are a whole lot of white people in the industrial Midwest who consider themselves Eastern European heritage, who are waking up to the fact that, oh my God, the Republican Party is crazy and my homeland is being abandoned by them. So, I mean, that is happening.
Yep. Anyway, let's return to the grievances. Let's return to the litany of complaints.
To the grievances for a minute. Wouldn't GOP inability to govern and intentional obstruction of what voters want have been more accurate a chyron?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. LOL, people don't go past the title. This tweet says, quote, Washington's latest failure to govern, as in both sidesism that includes you as the problem, Brian. Next step, why won't Dems agree to just shoot migrants on sight? Let's hear from Greg Abbott about that. Yep.
Republicans, not Washington. Republicans, put the blame where it belongs.
Mm-hmm.
Our only issue should be the title. This absolutely should read nothing else but the definitive autopsy of GOP's latest failure to govern.
And finally, yes, except she misspelled Republicans.
She did.
And it went on and on like that. This is just a handful of stuff I pulled off the social medias.
Next on our docket, Driftglass, is...
I just want to say, way to go, guys. Way to go,
guys.
Keep up the good work. Mm-hmm.
Next on our docket, Driftglass, is Governor Ned Lamont of Connecticut. Now, Driftglass, do you remember Ned Lamont?
I believe he was the oyster, or he was the irritant in the pearl that created the modern David Brooks. You know?
He ran for Senate from Connecticut.
And won the Democratic primary.
The Democratic primary because Democratic voters didn't want a war pimp who kissed George W. Bush on the mouth as their senator.
Nope.
And then the David Brookses of the world lost their damn minds.
They did. Oh my God. And that's when you and I got mentioned in the New York Times, little gal.
As bloggers? Yes.
As
dirty bloggers.
The net roots. You know, we are the Tom DeLays on the left who are the net roots are the other problem. And it's the Shia and the Sunni, and they're both equally terrible. And my good friend Joe Lieberman is not going to be senator. And that cannot stand.
Cannot stand. So Joe Lieberman will run as an independent, and Republicans in Connecticut will, and weak-minded Democrat independent types. I'm an independent. Will vote for Joe Lieberman. Right. But Ned Lamont is still around and is now governor of Connecticut. And Governor Ned is now, as a Democrat, not an independent, not running as an independent, he is now canceling medical debt in his state using Inflation Reduction Act money. Now, do you know which party sponsored and voted for the Inflation Reduction Act and which party did not vote in any way for the Inflation Reduction Act?
Was the party that voted for the independent Lieberman party?
That's right. No, not a single Republican voted for the Inflation Reduction Act.
Mm-hmm.
CNN reports, though, that in Connecticut, residents whose medical debt equals 5% or more of their annual income, or whose household income is up to 4%, 400% of the federal poverty line, which is about $125,000 in household income in 2024, are eligible. And in Connecticut, that's lower middle class, $125,000 for a household. But here's the most important part of it about this medical debt payoff. Those who qualify do not need to apply for it. They will receive letters in the mail saying their debt has been eliminated as soon as the summer. That's it.
Oh man.
Can you imagine having $300,000 in medical debt and all of a sudden you get a letter saying, no, you don't?
That's serious. I mean, that's a miracle.
It's a miracle.
It feels like a miracle.
And I believe he's using a nonprofit that buys medical debt and funding that and funding that process. This statistic just stunned me that more than 1 in 10 Connecticut residents have medical debt in collections. Not just have medical debt that they're paying off, but have it going to a collection agency. 10% of the population in Connecticut.
Yep.
Democrats get shit done and make life better for you.
Hell yeah.
Now we're gonna switch gears and let Driftglass talk about his podcast listening habit.
Let me crack my knuckles and put my boots up and
I did something this past week. Got Driftglass a little Valentine's Day present.
You did. Got me earbuds.
I got him wireless earbuds so he can walk around the house with his podcast and not be walking in on me knitting with, Rick Wilson blaring out of his pocket.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing about that, Blue Gal. Actually, it's a gift for both you and for me, and I think that's the best kind of gift.
It is the best kind of gift.
And I listen to several podcasts, and I listen to histories and revolution stuff. I do listen to a wide variety, movies, books, all kinds of things. But they just roll one to the next. So I'm walking around.
They have an algorithm just for you, Driftglass.
They really do. Just a little on me. And I got two Rick Wilson podcasts back to back, which is very exciting. And I listen to both of them because I'm always looking for that,
Well, it's podcastable, what Rick Wilson says sometimes.
Sometimes it is. And I really do like, sometimes there's a nugget of truth. Sometimes there really is some like deep insider information I didn't know about. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's like, that so-and-so did such and such back. I did not know that. So that's good information. And if your podcasts were 5 minutes long, telling me some insider dirt I never knew about some fucker, that's great. But they're not. And as I was listening to the second one, it rolled one to the other, and I fast forwarded through parts of it, but I get the gist. I got to thinking about the Whigs, like I do, because I just let my brain off the leash. Again, I wandered over to Judge Steve Harvey because my brain got, tired of listening to lawyers. And I wandered into American history about the Whigs.
Is there a breath mint named the Whigs?
No.
There
should be, though. Well, your breath would smell like what? Failure, I guess?
I guess so.
Yeah.
Dust and failure. Yeah.
This is, again, if you're looking for a podcast on the history of the Whig Party, this is not the podcast for you. This is just an analogy. And it's not a perfect analogy because it doesn't fit one-to-one. But I got to thinking, after the Whigs, I believe, got their asses kicked in 1852. That's when they just collapsed, basically. Mm-hmm. They won a couple of electoral votes, their candidates. But after that, their candidates just deserted. They went off to the Know-Nothings or the Republicans or whatever. The Whig Party was essentially over. But you just know there were like 9 Whigs left. And between them, they were all telling each other either, back in the good old days when things were great, weren't we awesome? We were fucking awesome. Man, we were just fucking great. And that was 5 of them. And the other 4 Whigs were like, one day they'll all come back.
Yes.
One day they'll realize that we were right and they were wrong, and they'll come back to us if we just wait long enough and pound our chest about how right we were. They'll come flooding back. So that's going through my mind as I listen to the first one was Rick Wilson interviewing S.E. Cupp, who you may or may not know from TV. S.E. Cupp was basically known to larger audiences than insider Republicans as that woman on CNN with the boots and the really hiked up high skirts, who put her feet up on the desk and talked a lot of libertarian stuff in a really breathy kind of, that kind of way. That's what she was known about. And she and Rick Wilson talked about the good old days of principled conservatism when everything was fucking wonderful. And they believed in things, and they were serious people, and they believed in serious ideas, and they were doing serious shit. They were sitting around reading Edmund Burke to each other all goddamn day. And that's the way it was until Donald Trump came along and ruined it all. And I remember the very serious and intellectual S.E. Cupp was working for Glenn Beck back then, actually. Mm-hmm. So I don't know when her seriousness was. Maybe it was over a weekend. I don't know. But, this very serious intellectual, and it was back during the good old days when you could shame people into things, when people were responsive to shame. And I'm sitting there scratching my head going, did Glenn Beck ever respond to shame when you were working for him? Did Rush Limbaugh, the guy who basically ran your party for 30 years, had he ever been shamed in anything? Did you ever run him out of the party? Did you ever take up against him? And no, you were writing for outfits like the American Spectator and Town Hall and Newsmax.
Criminals in this town used to believe in things. Honor, respect. Look at you. What do you believe in, huh? What do you believe in?
I believe whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you stranger.
So then my podcast player rolls over to Rick Wilson and Rena Shaw, who I believe was a delegate to the 2016 Republican Convention, a never Trump delegate, and tried to get Trump thrown off the ticket, which was a fool's errand, but good for you. She's also a political consultant and a media commentator, and she knows Rick Wilson, and suddenly she's on his podcast. And he and her, instead of talking about their glorious past, they talked about the future. Because one day, Blue Gal, history will judge these people. History will condemn them. One day they shall be infamous. And then we will be vindicated. In this future, we will be the heroes. We were right all along, and they will pay, Blue Gal. Many, many centuries after we're all dead, history will judge. And it's just wild to me that that's what they're focused on now. They're focused on inventing a glorious past for themselves where they're blameless and pure and did everything right and were warned about this, and a far-flung future in which they will be vindicated. And history, and I heard someone once say that history, asking for the judgment of history, is a secular prayer for divine intervention. I want God to come down and smite these people. But there is no God in this reckoning, so it's history. The muse of history will come down and set everything right. It'll be like the book of Revelations. History will return with a sword in its hand.
You mean the history that remembers that George W. Bush lied us into war? What about that history?
Yeah, that's the point. About half or two-thirds of all of the writing and podcasting we've ever done is pointing out the fact that these people are fucking brilliant at erasing history.
Yeah.
They just make it go away. George Bush is gone. Dick Cheney is gone. Liz Cheney, what? No, she's just a principled conservative who's a hero. The Iraq War, what was that? Barack Obama, I never called him a nasty word. They are excellent. They made Clinton disappear after they attacked him. They made Bush disappear. They made Obama disappear. And I guarantee you, Rick, because Rick, you built this machine, they will erase Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
When he drops dead, there'll be he'll be Stalin stretched out on a slab somewhere, and Nikita Khrushchev will come in and say, oh, he's a great man, he's a good man for the time, but let's move on. And before you can say Saint Ronald Reagan,
right,
they will have turned him into a distant memory, and they will have moved on, and all the people that you're bitching about now will all be back as your good friends, and you'll be back
wearing a coffee filter on their heads.
Right.
Yes, right.
And you'll be doing what you wanted to do all this time, which is shitting on liberals. Because the worst thing, as we learned on these podcasts that I listened to, the worst thing you can be accused of is being a Democrat.
Yeah.
Absolutely the worst thing.
Yep.
It's all my friends. I gave up a lot. I gave up, but now I can sleep at night. But these people come up to me and say, Rick, you're a Democrat. You're a squish. It's like, oh, no, I'm not a Democrat. It's like, ooh, there could be nothing ickier than being a Democrat.
Right.
I'm a principled conservative. Like,
I'm an independent constitutional conservative who hates Trump. Right.
Because the worst thing you can call someone still is a Democrat, which is why they don't want to be in our camp. They want to run things, but they don't want any part of us. They want to run the show. And I agree with Charlie Pierce. It's all hands on deck, not all hands on the wheel.
Yeah, right.
And, you guys... But
you have a lot of mopping to do.
Yeah. So I have every confidence that they will simply erase the last 8 years and rewrite it as something else. And they
market
will
it as something else, right?
Yeah. And they'll get the nice people in the conservative media who will, like Joe Scarborough and Nicole Wallace,
all very excited.
Go along with it.
Yep.
And it will all be forgotten. And there'll be a couple of podcasters out there, you and me, who are like, remember back when they were like 2 minutes ago, these other people completely, and we'll go through it all again because time is a flat circle, Blue Gal. And here we are.
One thing that made me feel good this week was Hal Sparks showing off how Fox News and Maria Bartiromo had clipped their exclusive interview with Donald Trump and deleted parts of it. And there's just jumps that are in the video that was aired on Fox.
Yeah, you dragged me in and watched that. It's amazing.
It is amazing. Just amazing that, nope, we're not going to include that part of the answer because we don't want to get sued again. And it was, as Hal said, it was all rigged this or stolen that or whatever. They just clipped it out. And there are times on Fox when they just show Trump and don't air any of his speech. They just have sane people who are on message talking over him on the air.
Well, it's like the dear leader from Sleeper. He's in his chair, waving to everyone. Yeah, and he's alive. It's just a picture of him doing waving. That's all he's got to do, and everyone's happy.
Yeah,
but and the freeze frames on her face. Yeah, I thought were hilarious.
Of Maria Bartiromo realizing how badly this is going. Yes. I was going to talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I will for a moment, but there's something else I want to ask you, Driftglass.
Sure.
But first, Marjorie Taylor Greene did appear to be genuinely terrified this week that the Mayorkas impeachment failed.
Yep.
Because that's something she promised to the mob.
Right. The mob don't break the promises to the mob.
I don't think she's got a conscience, but I do think she has a sense of self-preservation.
Yeah.
And got a really hard glimpse of the downward slide she's on. And it scares her. And you got to remember, she hitched her wagon to Kevin McCarthy.
She did. Yeah.
And that was going to bring her legitimacy. That was going to make her a real congresswoman. And that's gone now. And, I see karma happening to her, and I shake my head. But here's a question I have for you, Driftglass, speaking for all men on the internet.
Of course. Happy to.
I did a post this week at Crooks and Liars that was very simple. It was airing, as I said earlier, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's interview with Chris Hayes. And what you do at Crooks and Liars with that kind of story is you clip the video, find the transcript, clean up the transcript, and post it. You don't need a lot of editorial comment. People know who AOC is. They know what, they want to hear what she's going to say. They don't need a lot of editorializing from me or anybody else. But sometimes I like to add a tweet at the end of the post to just put a bow on it. I made the mistake of going and looking up Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on Twitter.
Yeah, that was a mistake. Yep.
Ugly, ugly, ugly. And, she puts up with a lot, given how much right-wing trolls, of a certain gender, mostly, with tremendous vitriol against her.
Yes.
But what I noticed this time that I had not noticed before is them posting pictures that clearly they have a source for these pictures of her, where her breasts have been enhanced digitally. And I don't understand that. If you hate this person so badly that you would add boobs, make her boobs look like Mar-a-Lago boobs, because that's what they're supposed to look like. Can you explain that? Or
sure. Speaking as a man, Blue Gal, I take no ownership of this bad behavior on the part of the men you're referring to, but I believe it comes down to ownership.
I
will turn her into the person I want. I will possess her. And, she thinks she's so smart. She thinks she's so powerful, and she thinks she's got all that. I'm going to put another set of tits on her and make her mine. And then she'll be mine. And then I can fantasize about doing what I want.
I see.
And, it's basic juvenile bullshit that,
guerrilla behavior. Yes.
Yeah. It's not hard to understand once you understand that you're not dealing with people who are like, I'm trying to make a subtle political statement here.
No, there was nothing subtle about this. And I had not noticed it before. But when I went and, scrolled through tweet after tweet after tweet of, hatred, but also pictures of her. And it's like, and it's not like I spend my time thinking about AOC's tits. That's not it. No. But I've seen enough pictures of her to know what she looks like.
Well, I'll tell you what.
And she doesn't look like that.
Next time we're in Chicago, I will take you on a quick tour of the men's rooms of dive bars. And you'll see what's sketched on the wall. Like, I wonder what he's trying to say with that.
No, I think
I know. Yeah. No, it's not that hard to figure out.
So they never do advance from the age of 13, I take it.
Well, as I said to the kids growing up, all men are dogs. Some men learn to master their doggishness. And then they become gentlemen. But, that there's something real primitive and nasty and very testosterone driven in most men. And those and men, the good ones, learn how to redirect it, control it, keep it under wraps, focus it, and deploy it when it's appropriate.
Right.
When it's
during the Super Bowl, or whatever.
Super Bowl, or somebody's hassling some woman at a bar.
Yeah.
And you step in and say, "Are you really sure you want to do that? have you considered all the life choices that have brought you to this moment?"
And when you're 6'8", you're going to do that. I understand. You told me that you can't win a fight.
No.
You personally can't win a fight in a bar.
Big guy can't win a fight. We'll always be the guy who is the bad guy because we're the big guy. But there are. I mean, I would imagine that. Why can't I? Oh, Taylor Swift. Let's take Taylor Swift and her boyfriend.
Yeah.
He seems like a really big.
He is really
athletic,
big guy. Yep.
Nice guy.
Genuinely nice guy. Yeah.
And the world, believe it or not, has a lot of, genuinely nice guys and genuinely nice women and genuinely kind people.
Yeah.
Who have all come from the same root stock of genetic.
And his brother, Travis Kelce's brother, who is, his full brother, is, and I'm saying this in the nicest way possible, slightly lower on the evolutionary scale than Travis.
Family, man. Somebody's got to be on the top of the family tree.
He drinks a little too much. He's a little loud. He swears out a lot. He's, he's not as polished. He just isn't.
But there are some guys who just are rotten to the core and some guys who are not. And it's genetics and it's how you're raised and who your mom was or your dad is. A whole bunch of stuff goes into it. But the upshot is, once you're an adult, you're responsible for that shit.
Right. All right, well, let's do a news roundup.
Okay. The "oh my God, can you believe Clarence Thomas didn't recuse himself" chorus on social media is, there's got to be a word out there for something that's sad and sickening and hilarious all at once. I don't know what it is, but that's what it is. This kind of like, oh my God, can you believe Clarence Thomas? Yes, I know. How can you not know this about Clarence Thomas? He's corrupt. He's awful. He's been that way for decades. Did you not notice this? Yeah. So, yeah.
To good guy lawyers like my TV husband, Eli Mistal, I have a TV lawyer and a TV husband. Gorsuch and Alito are the worst. Quote, Gorsuch is spinning out something about how a sitting president who committed insurrection should still be able to give orders. I have no idea how this has anything to do with anything, and neither does Murray. But Gorsuch is being pissy, so we all have to sit there till he's done. Unquote. Yeah, that's when you're a judge in the courtroom. That's it, right?
Yep, you are the law.
While over on Republican Twitter, Gorsuch and Alito are the heroes.
They're heroes.
They're just, it's so great.
They're saving America.
Saving America, yeah.
This week, Paul Krugman. Remember Paul Krugman?
I do.
Yeah. Told Greg Sargent at the Washington Post that he gets, quote, a little bit questioned, unquote, by New York Times editors when he writes that the Biden economy is doing well. They want him to give more credence to arguments that it isn't. It's just in the blood over there. They can't stop doing it.
Can't you get Peter Baker to help you write your economics articles, Paul Krugman?
Yeah, come on.
For fairness and balance.
There are people who feel differently, who feel things are bad. And you have to respect the fact that
the gross domestic product of the United States is lower.
Here, I've got a feel right here for you. Why don't you feel this for me?
Feel this?
Jesus. Right.
No, you are not hallucinating. Republicans really are in the process of murdering their own bill because if it passes, it might help Joe Biden.
Oh, no.
And it does infuriate both of us that people are acting like this is the first time this has ever happened.
Oh, yeah.
As if Mitch McConnell never filibustered his own bill while Obama was president.
Yeah.
But Senate Republicans this week did block the Senate Republicans. Did block the $118 billion bipartisan border package that Republicans had demanded but then rejected after pressure from Trump, who was making the border a campaign issue but not wanting to fix it until he gets a chance to fix it in 2 weeks. The bill failed to advance 49 to 50, falling short of the 60-vote threshold and essentially guaranteeing Congress won't pass any broad immigration or border legislation before the presidential election, even though this is the crisis of our time.
Right. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone.
Yeah.
This is from Igor Bobek, the senior politics writer at Huffington Post. Quote, wow, Langford won't say if he'll vote to advance his own bill on Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
This is Langford's quote. And I'm going to have trouble reading this because it's gibberish. The biggest issue that I have is obviously I've got a lot of members that have questions on it. It's not going to move and become law if we try to be able to force this right now on it, unquote. Back to Mr. Bobbick. This is incredible. I just asked Lankford to clarify if he'll vote for cloture, and he said, quote, why would we force a vote on something that would kill it to be able to force the vote now versus give it more time and give the opportunity to be able to go through it, unquote. Question. How much more time do you think you'll need? November? Maybe December, Lankford quipped.
Oh, yeah. After the election, you might be able to pass, miracle bills.
And this was Senator Lankford earlier this week.
Some of them have been very clear with me. They have political differences with the bill. They say it's the wrong time to solve the problem or let the presidential election solve this problem. In fact, I had a popular commentator 4 weeks ago that I talked to that told me flat out, before they knew any of the contents of the bill, nothing was out at that point, that told me flat out, if you try to move a bill that solves the border crisis during this presidential year, I will do whatever I can to destroy you, because I do not want you to solve this during the presidential election. By the way, they have been faithful to their promise and have done everything they can to destroy me in the past several weeks.
Remember, Lankford was the guy that Mitch McConnell handpicked to negotiate on behalf of Republicans in the Senate, and hammering away about the crisis at the border being the greatest existential threat to America in history that must be solved right now is practically the only thing running on conservative media all day, every day. Mm-hmm. They were willing to hold all kinds of other urgent matters hostage to that issue, including support for Ukraine. And they got the deal of their dreams. They will never get a better offer than this. It's the best bill they were ever going to get and ever will get. Mm-hmm. One phone call from Mar-a-Lago, and that deal is dead. We're going to sell out Ukraine and let problems at the border, including fentanyl. We're going to let Halloween fentanyl back in the country.
Oh, no, not Halloween fentanyl. That's the worst kind of fentanyl.
And that's any person who loses a child to fentanyl in the next year had a chance to try to stem the tide, and sorry, but Donald Trump blew in a call from Mar-a-Lago and wouldn't let that happen.
And some Republicans have been really open about the fact that they're sabotaging their own bill because it might help Joe Biden, because they know what we know. That's the thing. They know that Republican base voters, we have said this a million times, and we really mean it, are reprogrammable meatbags who will completely forget everything they said that they believe deep in their hearts for months or years if Trump just tells them to, or if Hannity tells them to. And boom, it's gone from the memory. It's gone forever, and they have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
And the Republicans that voted against the impeachment of Mayorkas, the threats were coming off the transom, over the transom immediately.
Yeah.
Name and shame, name and threaten. So, yeah. Of course, the pain of witnessing this absolute disgrace is softened just a little by watching Mike Johnson humiliate himself over and over and over again, just like Moses, Driftglass.
Just like we say in the Bible, Moses. Mm-hmm.
Someone pointed out a statistic that with these two bills dying in the same day, Mike Johnson has had more failed votes in one day than Nancy Pelosi had in 2 terms.
Mm-hmm. Way to go, Mike. Go for the record. Go for the record, Mike. Get the record done, Mike. Yep.
So Jake Sherman wrote, quote, "It's only getting worse for House Republicans. What we're witnessing now with Speaker Johnson defies easy definition. Johnson lost 2 massive votes on the floor yesterday, impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas and Israel aid. He knew the vote count on both, yet he decided to proceed." And we as an aside, we know why. Yes, he was acting on faith.
Yes, he was. Jesus.
It will change hearts as the votes are happening. Mm-hmm. He chose to lose in an embarrassing fashion. Several House Republican leadership aides were stunned that Johnson was in the speaker's chair to gavel in losing votes. He didn't have to be there to hold the gavel. He could have called a lackey to do it. Inside Johnson's leadership circle, there are plenty who doubt his decision-making capability while being forced to begrudgingly execute his questionable strategies. Among rank-and-file House GOP lawmakers, there are a lot of people scratching their heads about where he's leading them. He's leading you into the Red Sea is where he's leading you. It's not a wave.
No.
It's a flood.
No.
We're now within a month of government funding expiring. The Israel-Ukraine-Taiwan funding bill, which actually passed, as I said, with 67 votes in the Senate. Mm-hmm. Shockingly, that's a shocking high number of senators voted for Israel-Ukraine aid. Mm-hmm. So that is going to come over from the Senate. And then what? It's only getting harder for Johnson. He's been speaker for 105 days.
105 days.
Unquote.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Now, he was counting on a Democrat being in surgery during his failed impeachment effort. You know, this is the reverse of, there was one set of footprints on the beach, Blue Cat. And then suddenly there were two sets of footprints on the beach. And it was a Democrat coming back. It was Democrats coming back from surgery. Oh, yeah. No. I didn't count on Democrats coming to vote for things, because that never happens. Now, friend of the pod, Bob Seska, reminds us, quote, if you ever lost your mind wondering why Nancy Pelosi didn't introduce every single one of your progressive wish list bills, it's because holding floor votes on measures without enough support is this humiliating.
And she doesn't do that.
No, she knows how to do math. And and Hakeem Jeffries knows how to do math, and they know how to count votes. And
maybe Mike Johnson should go and watch that Pelosi documentary.
Oh, yeah.
It might teach him how to be Speaker of the House.
Yeah. Can't do it.
Another one bites the dust. Ronna Romney McDaniel is resigning her position with the RNC.
Yeah.
And my dream is that she writes a tell-all book, and chapter 1 is entitled Jared Kushner.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It's unlikely to happen.
Not going to happen.
That's my dream. A girl can dream.
Yeah, and where's she going to go now? Who knows? The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office said Wednesday that largely due to an unexpected surge in immigration, over the next 10 years, the U.S. economy will be about $7 trillion larger, and federal revenues about $1 trillion bigger. Huh.
Because immigrants start businesses.
Yeah. They pay taxes.
Yeah.
Weird how that works, huh?
A federal appeals court rejected Trump's claim that he's immune from federal prosecution for his efforts to overturn the 2020 election or anything else. He's not immune. We cannot accept former President Trump's claim that a president has unbounded authority to commit crimes that would neutralize the most fundamental check on executive power, the recognition and implementation of election results. The 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit wrote, nor can we sanction his apparent contention that the executive has carte blanche to violate the rights of individual citizens to vote and have their votes count.
Yeah. An appeals court has said that not wearing a mask during the COVID-19 health emergency is not, in fact, a free speech right issue. Trenton, New Jersey. A federal appeals court shot down claims Monday that New Jersey residents' refusal to wear face masks at school board meetings during the COVID-19 outbreak constituted protected speech under the First Amendment. Quote, a question shadowing suits such as these is whether there is a First Amendment right to refuse to wear a protective mask as required by valid health and safety orders put in place during a recognized public health emergency. Like all courts to address this issue, we conclude there is not. The court said.
But period. My freedom. My freedom.
What about my freedom? My body, my choices.
And finally, Mark Meadows did get immunity for testifying against Trump, coming as a surprise to no one on this side of the aisle. Confirming reports from 3 months ago, the New York Times says Meadows spoke expansively to federal prosecutors because he doesn't want to go to jail. And then the next day testified before the grand jury for approximately 6 hours because he doesn't want to go to jail.
That's right. Absolutely right.
Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's Internet Kitty is Shiver. Mm-hmm. Shiver is a lovely kitty who happens to live with 2 idiot dogs that refuse to learn lessons about personal space or how to count votes on the floor of the House of Representatives. Therefore, Shiver spends a lot of time in the basement, her private retreat. And our cat, Barack Hussein, the Kenyan usurper, also is there with you, Shiver, as a retreat in the basement. And of course, Shiver eats freshly poured cat food, our fake sponsor, whether you serve Pet Store Perfection or Dollar Store Dreck. Your cat will sit on the kitchen floor and demand. that the food they eat is only freshly poured.
Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh, my Lord, it's freshly poured.
And you can visit Shiver, a beautiful long-haired cat, at our Facebook page and website, and you can send your internet kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service, go Postal Unions, letter on the air unless you say otherwise.
Don't be like Republicans and forget things that you don't want to remember. Don't forget our gourmet coffee glide line. We don't have a glide line, do we? No, we have a guideline.
A guideline.
I'm sorry, Blue Gal. I've been talking for 17 straight hours. And my brain is starting to turn into poached eggs. But please do not forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. Iced, hot, doesn't matter. Buy one for us.
Flat white,
Flat white. A Shamrock Shake. I believe they're coming back now. I can't drink them because
you can't drink them. They make you sick. No,
they'll kill me. But you know what? The cash equivalent would not kill me. I'm just saying. This is not charity. This is our job. If you can spare $5 a month, please spare $5 a month at patreon.com/proleftpod. Please also share our show on social media. And if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen as well. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much for doing that. We have like 7 new Patreons in the past 2 weeks.
That's wonderful.
And, those $5 a month contributions really make a huge difference in our ability to pay our bills. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, in a unanimous decision, the Internet Kitties refused to recuse themselves on the matter of whether or not they're getting enough treats. Case closed.
Let's think about living.
Think about living.
Let's think about loving.
Think about loving.
Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.